This is a download from the BBC. For more information and our terms of use, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.
This is 6 Minute English from bbclearningenglish.com.
This is 6 Minute English. I'm Yvonne Archer and I've been joined by Rob. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Yvonne.
Now, Rob, you may not know this, but experts say that men are the weaker sex. Can you explain that term for us, please? The weaker sex.
Well, I'll try. Now, traditionally, women are generally known as the weaker sex, so they're not as strong as men and need to be protected. But in terms of health, women are the strong, healthy ones, so men are supposedly the weaker sex.
Now it's time for today's question. Rob, compared with the early 1960s, each year, the number of men who enter medical schools in the UK has doubled. But how many women enter medical school each year? A, about the same number. B, triple the number. Or C, tenfold.
That's a tricky one. I would probably say about the same number.
As usual, we'll find out the correct answer later on. So, why are men the weaker sex in terms of health? Writer Doug Devaney told the BBC's breakfast television programme how he started taking tablets for angina, a type of heart condition. But unfortunately, Doug was still getting chest pains, and a few days later, he collapsed in the street.
15 minutes later, after the initial attack, I thought, oh, well, I've got through that, and so forth. I went off and carried on my business as usual. And then but then I realised after a while that I couldn't run to the bus or anything like that, so I just thought, well, I've already been there. I don't want to be a fuss. I don't want to be a burden.
Wow, just 15 minutes later, it was business as usual for Doug. He carried on doing what he usually does. Doug should have gone back to the hospital when he was still getting pains in his chest. But he didn't. Shocking.
Definitely. And that helps to explain why men are the weaker sex. They find it difficult to ask for medical help when they need it, which can be dangerous. For example, Rob, did you know that men are more likely than women to get cancer and die from it? And they're more likely to commit suicide.
No, I didn't know that. That's really shocking.
And sad too. So if more men ask for medical attention, more lives could be saved. But did you catch the reasons Doug Devaney gave for not going back to the hospital, Rob?
Yes, he said he didn't want to be a fuss, so he didn't want to draw any attention to himself. Or we can also say he didn't want to make a fuss.
He also said he didn't want to be a burden.
No, he didn't want to be a nuisance, a bother, to use up anyone's time and make them feel like they were responsible for looking after him. Doug didn't want to be a burden.
Of course, doctors are there to look after us. We're not a burden to them, even if, like men, many of our illnesses are caused by lifestyle choices. Rob, what are lifestyle choices?
Well, these are things that we choose to do in life, such as drinking and smoking too much. An unhealthy diet maybe, or not getting enough exercise. Those are all lifestyle choices.
Now, as men tend to work more hours than women, it can be more difficult or harder for them to ask for the help they need and get to doctor's appointments. But are there other reasons why they don't? Peter Baker is chief executive of the charity, the Men's Health Forum, and Peter has a possible answer for us.
I think men are still stuck in the attitude they mustn't admit there's something wrong with them. They mustn't show weakness, admit a vulnerability. And I think this makes it much harder to ask for help from a doctor or another health professional.
So men have an attitude, a way of thinking that they just won't change. They're stuck in their attitude, which makes it harder for them to ask for medical help.
Experts say that we men believe we mustn't let other people know. We mustn't admit that there's something wrong with us. And Doug's story shows us how dangerous it can be.
Exactly. Peter Baker says that men believe they mustn't show weakness or vulnerability. But can you explain what is meant by vulnerability, Rob?
Yes, if you're vulnerable, you're not at your best. Perhaps you're easily hurt, either physically because you're ill or emotionally because, for example, you're not feeling particularly happy. And men don't like to show that they're vulnerable. They don't like to show their vulnerability.
So what can be done to change this situation where men are now the weaker sex when it comes to health? Here's Peter Baker again with 2 suggestions.
I think we've got to do 2 things. We've got to educate men, change men's attitudes, make them more aware. We've also got to make the system much more accessible.
So the medical system needs to be easier to use. It needs to be more accessible, and men need to be made more aware.
Yes, men need help to understand more about when it's really important for them to get medical help and why, even if the problem was caused by lifestyle choices.
Absolutely. Now, earlier, Rob, I asked, since the early 1960s, how many women enter medical school each year?
And I said about the same number.
It's actually tenfold.
Wow, that is a lot.
It is. But that's all for today's 6-Minute English.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That was 6 Minute English from BBC Learning English.